Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling a really big subject. It's one that often feels, well, confusing, maybe even a bit scary.
Definitely. We're talking about the book of Revelation, specifically the seven seals, the seven trumpets, and the seven plagues.
Right. And most people, when they read about these, they just see, one disaster after another, like a list of catastrophes.
And look, the imagery is intense. You've got fire, blood, stars falling. It's easy to see why people view it as separate, terrifying events.
But the sources we're looking at today, they really challenge that view.
They absolutely do. They argue, quite strongly actually, that we need to see this whole sequence differently, not just random judgments.
No, instead, it's presented as a single, very structured theological process, almost like an administrative plan.
That's a great way to put it, an administrative plan.
So our goal today, our mission for this deep dive, is to try and unpack that complexity for you. We're not just going to list the events.
No, we want to get to the sort of theological spine that holds it all together.
Exactly. How do these judgments connect fundamentally to this idea of the Great Atonement, the Daisuk Joil?
And also, how does it link to something even bigger? The completion of free will. That's a huge concept in these sources.
It really is. So the material suggests this whole sequence, seals, trumpets, plagues, it's one defined operation.
Right, a successful one, leading to what's described very precisely as the eradication of sin in space and time.
That specific phrase from the source, Sigongan Eseo Joril Samils Kasinun Guajong, it sounds very deliberate.
It does, cosmic cleansing, but with a clear administrative purpose behind it. It's not just chaos.
Okay, so let's try and unpack this blueprint. Where should we start? I know the first few seals are famous, the horsemen and all that.
They are, and they represent, historical places, the struggles of humanity and the church. Important context.
But our source material really zooms in later, doesn't it? It puts a massive emphasis on the seventh seal.
It really does. It defines the seventh seal explicitly. It says the seventh seal is the great day of atonement.
That seems crucial. Why is making that specific link, seventh seal equals atonement day, so foundational to understanding everything else?
Well, it completely shifts the lens. Instead of seeing judgment as just punishment, you start seeing it as perfected reconciliation, purification.
Well, like the Old Testament Day of Atonement.
Exactly like that. That was the highest day of the year, the moment the high priest went into the Holy of Holies to cleanse everything, reconcile sin for the whole system, the whole people.
So by calling the seventh seal that day, the sources are saying what follows isn't just random destruction.
Precisely. It's controlled, it's purposeful, it's a cosmic-level purification operation following a divine protocol.
Okay. And the seventh seal, right from the start, it has a dual purpose, doesn't it? Reflecting that ancient ritual.
It does. Two sides of the same coin, really. First, there's the atonement itself, sakjo.
And that's tied directly to the incense offering, the bunyang.
Yes, and importantly, this isn't just about forgiving people's sins. The sources call it the atonement of the created order, pog sakjo.
Atonement of the created order. What does that mean practically? How's it different from, say, personal salvation?
It's much bigger. Personal salvation deals with individual sin, repentance, faith. This pyogi sakjo is about restoring the system itself.
This is system.
Yeah, like the very fabric of creation, the physical world, the spiritual realms, even the laws governing them, which have been sort of polluted or legally compromised by rebellion and sin.
So it's cleansing the stage, not just the actors.
That's a good way to think about it. Cleansing the sanctuary, the earth, even the realm of the dead, Hades. Reconciling the rules of creation, confirming God's justice is right before you can have this eternal dwelling with a holy God. It's systemic.
Okay, that makes sense. And the second purpose of the seventh seal?
Judgment and completion. Because think about it, you can't have a truly final, successful atonement if the possibility of the offense of sin still exists.
Right, it wouldn't be finished.
Exactly. So the seven seal process must also involve the extinction of the possibility of sin. The source uses the term byamjo ganyungsang samyo.
Extinguishing the possibility. Wow.
And that naturally requires the execution of final judgment simpan on those who ultimately refuse that reconciliation.
So it's like the final verdict after the trial, closing the case definitively.
It's validating the choices made, affirming eternal righteousness.
Okay, so the breaking of the seventh seal isn't the start of chaos. It's the start of the end of the legal process, the purification process.
Correct.
Let's trace that initial sequence then, because it kicks off immediately with this incense offering.
Yes, the liturgical start, you could say. Revelation chapter 8, verse 3. You have an angel, many see this as Christ, the high priest by the golden altar.
Holding a golden censer. the GM Hyangro.
and given a lot of incense. The text emphasizes much incense to offer with the prayers of all the saints.
That detail much incense with the prayers seems vital. What does that signify?
It's the formal presentation. All the faithfulness, the suffering, the witness, the righteousness developed through grace by God's people throughout all of history.
Accumulated testimony.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's all gathered, combined with the merits of Christ, symbolized by the incense and presented before the throne.
Right.
It's like the evidence for the final verdict.
Handing over the paperwork of justification almost.
Yeah, that works. The prayers are offered with the atonement. They're inseparable at this point. And this offering, this acceptance, immediately triggers the next phase.
Which is the physical judgment starting. Revelation 8.5, the angel takes fire from that same altar, fills the censer,
The altar of sacrifice, where the incense was just offered,
throws it onto the earth, and bam! Thunder, voices, lightning, earthquakes.
that's the transition point. Heavenly liturgy leads directly to earthly consequence.
So why is throwing the fire the signal that the trumpets are about to blow? What's the symbolism there?
The fire comes from the altar, the place representing both sacrifice and divine judgment. Throwing it to earth means the offering, the prayers, the atonement presented has been accepted in heaven. And now, the earthly consequences of that accepted atonement, which include justice and judgment against rebellion, must unfold. The fire is the go-ahead signal.
The divine countdown starts.
Right. The prayers are heard, the atonement is active, now justice rolls out. The 7 trumpets are the direct, sequential execution of the justice inherent in that 7th seal atonement.
To really get the weight of this incense offering, you mentioned we need to look back. The Leviticus connection, the old Day of Atonement ritual.
Yes, absolutely. Leviticus 16, verse 12, it's very specific about the high priest's actions before entering the Holy of Holies.
What did he have to do?
He had to take burning coals from the altar, get finely ground sweet incense, and bring it inside the veil,
Okay.
and then burn the incense on the fire before the Lord so that the cloud of smoke covers the mercy seat, the Sakjo. So that's on top of the Ark of the Covenant.
And the reason given for creating this thick cloud of smoke.
Survival. The text explicitly says that he may not die. The raw, unfiltered glory and holiness of God's presence dwelling there was just too intense, lethal even for the consecrated high priest. The incense smoke acted as a veil, a buffer.
A necessary barrier of grace.
Exactly. It allowed him to stand in that holy presence and perform the atonement rites without being consumed.
So how does that protective function translate to the 7th seal event in Revelation?
Well, think about it. The 7th seal incense offering, happening in heaven, acts as that necessary purification and protection before the judgments, the trumpets and plagues are poured out on the earth.
Ah, so it purifies the process itself.
In a way, yes. It perfects the heavenly side of the atonement first. Because that's done, because the faithful are covered by that incense, the subsequent judgments can be executed justly and discriminately.
Meaning they can target the unrighteous without destroying the elect along with them.
Precisely. The atonement provides the necessary spiritual and legal separation. The prayers of the saints ascended with that incense. They are covered. Now, the judgments required by justice can proceed in a controlled, righteous way. The atonement cloud protects creation before the storm hits.
Okay, that sets the stage perfectly.
Right.
The incense is offered, accepted, the fire is thrown, the signals are given.
And now we move directly into the 7 trumpets, the 1st through the 7th Nepal.
These follow immediately from the incense offering. They are the unfolding, the progression of the 7th seal process on earth.
And this period is where things get really intense. Spiritual warfare ramps up. Loyalties are tested under extreme pressure.
This is the time often called the Great Tribulation.
Yes, the trumpets map out escalating judgments, environmental, political, demonic, that constitute that period.
Let's focus on the 2 trumpets that the sources highlight as particularly crucial in defining this tribulation, starting with the 5th trumpet.
Right, the 5th trumpet. The sources define this one as the first woe, the first wa.
And this is where we see that star falling from heaven.
Yes, an angel, according to the text, who is given the key to the shaft of the bottomless pit, the Mujeagon.
And when the pit is opened, smoke, like a furnace. And out of the smoke come these locusts.
Not ordinary locusts, though, the Huangchungi. They're described as having power like scorpions.
And their mission is specific, isn't it? Not to kill.
No, only to torment, to cause agony for 5 months. And crucially, they only target those who do not have the seal of God on their foreheads.
That targeting is key. But the sources add another layer of context here, linking this event to something cosmic.
Yes, this is vital. The star falling, the pit opening, it's tied directly to Satan being cast down from heaven. Satan Chirac.
From the war in heaven described in Revelation 12.
Exactly. Michael and his angels fighting the dragon, Satan, the ancient serpent, and throwing him out. He loses his access to accuse believers before God in heaven.
So the fifth trumpet isn't just some random plague. It's the earthly consequence of Satan's cosmic defeat and expulsion.
Precisely. He's cast down, filled with fury because he knows his time is short. And in that fury, paradoxically, he's given this key. He's allowed to unleash this torment.
But even then, it's controlled, right? The 5-month limit, the instruction not to kill.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It shows that even in his rage, Satan is still operating within boundaries set by God. The torment serves a purpose.
Which is?
Well, likely twofold. It's a severe test of faith for God's people, who are protected from the worst of it but still witness it. And for those aligned with the beast, perhaps it's a final, painful wake-up call, a taste of the darkness they've chosen.
A severe mercy, maybe?
Perhaps. But it definitely marks the beginning of Satan's final, concentrated assault, now confined entirely to the earthly realm.
That intense pressure then sets up the sixth trumpet, which the sources define as the second row, second wa.
Right. And this one is associated with the 4 angels who are bound at the great river Euphrates, the Uberade Forchianza.
The Euphrates. That's often a boundary marker in the Bible, isn't it? Edge of the promised land, source of invasions.
Exactly. And here, it seems to symbolize a boundary of divine restraint. These angels are being held back.
The sources connect this to the idea of temporary restraint or holding back of the beast. Jimsung Joji?
Yes, the primary event under the 6th trumpet in Revelation 9 is the release of this huge, terrifying cavalry army that kills a third of mankind.
A massive escalation of judgment.
Definitely. But the sources seem to emphasize the context around this trumpet. They equate the period initiated by the 6th trumpet with the main phase of the Great Tribulation itself, the Seongdo Daewonlan.
The time of the beast's rule and intense persecution of the saints.
That's the period. So the restraint is complex. The 4 angels are holding back that specific army till the exact appointed hour, day, month, and year.
Okay.
But there's also this underlying sense that the full unleashing of the beast's oppressive power has also been held in check, restrained until this specific time.
So the 6th trumpet marks the moment God permits the beast system to reach its peak of persecution.
Yes. It's the time allowed for the final, intense pressure on the saints, and crucially, the time for the saints to complete their final witness under that pressure. The restraint ensures the timing is precise, serving God's ultimate purpose.
Which brings us to a really critical part of this phase. The protection and witness mechanisms that operate during this great tribulation under the 6th trumpet.
This is where we see clear evidence that it's not just uncontrolled chaos. God provides specific resources for his people. The sources group these under the concept of the sealing angel.
Okay, what does that involve? You mentioned 5 key elements.
Yes. First, there's the latter rain spirit, Nujin B. Sanya.
This is like a final, powerful outpouring of the Holy Spirit.
Exactly. Think Pentecost, but perhaps even more intense or focused for this specific end-time crisis. It gives the believers the spiritual power, the insight, the courage they need to stand firm and witness effectively under unprecedented pressure.
Makes sense. What second?
The little book, Jig and Shake. This comes from Revelation 10.
Where John eats the scroll, sweet in the mouth, bitter in the stomach.
That's the one. The sources see this as symbolizing the deep internalization of God's prophetic message for this final period.
Internalization.
Yeah, it's not just knowing the prophecies. It's digesting them, making them part of you. Even the difficult parts, the suffering, the judgments, the bitter aspects. This deep understanding fuels the witness. It makes it authentic, inseparable from the believer's life.
Okay. Third element.
The 2 witnesses to Shungen. These figures dominate Revelation 11. The 2 olive trees, the 2 lampstands.
And they prophesy for a specific time, right? 12,260 days.
Yes, 12,260 days or 42 months, the same duration often associated with the beast's main period of power. They are the direct public prophetic counter-witness during that time.
And they have serious power, shutting up the sky so it doesn't rain, turning water to blood, striking the earth with plagues.
They are a walking demonstration that God's authority is still supreme, even when the beast seems to be running rampant. They're a constant thorn in the side of the oppressive system.
Their ministry is confrontational.
Very. And their eventual martyrdom, followed by their resurrection and ascension, becomes the ultimate validation of their testimony and God's power over death.
Okay, 4th element of the sealing.
the 144,000, mentioned in Revelation 7 and again in Revelation 14.
Sealed servants of God. What's their specific role during this tribulation?
They seem to represent a core group, perhaps the first fruits of this final harvest, who are sealed for spiritual protection. Not necessarily protection from physical harm or martyrdom.
But protection from deception, from taking the mark of the beast.
Exactly. Sealed with God's name on their foreheads, signifying ownership and loyalty. They sing a new song before the throne that only they can learn.
Suggesting a unique, intimate experience of God gained through this fiery trial.
That seems to be the implication. They represent the successfully sealed remnant who maintain purity.
And the fifth element.
The woman representing the church who flees into the wilderness, Revelation 12.
Given 2 wings of a great eagle to fly to a place prepared by God, a place of safety, the Yabachio.
Yes. This shows God's provision for the corporate body, the community of faith. While individuals, like the 2 witnesses, might be called to martyrdom, the church as an entity is supernaturally preserved.
So there's both sacrifice and preservation happening simultaneously.
It seems so. It shows the multifaceted way God works, protecting some, empowering others to witness through suffering. It ensures the continuity of the faithful community through the crisis.
All this intense activity, the persecution, the witnessing, the protection, brings us back to the tribulation duration. Jesus said in Matthew 24 it would be uniquely terrible.
Unprecedented, yes, worse than anything before or after.
But then he adds that crucial phrase, for the sake of the elect, those days will be shortened, gam hazira.
And this shortening, according to the sources, isn't arbitrary. It's not just God deciding, okay, that's enough. It's linked theologically.
How so?
It's connected to the completion of the necessary witness. The sources imply there's a specific required number, a quorum, if you like, of faithful witnesses, particularly martyred witnesses, Sangha, needed to provide the ultimate proof.
Proof of what?
Proof that God's way is right, that his law of love can be kept, that free will can choose righteousness even under the most extreme duress, even unto death.
So the suffering has a specific goal, a measure.
Exactly. It lasts precisely as long as needed for that full testimony to be registered in the heavenly courts. Once that predetermined number of witnesses successfully reaches the standard, loving God and truth more than their own lives.
The standard of John 15.13, laying down one's life.
Yes. Once that spiritual proof is complete, the purpose of the tribulation, in that sense, is fulfilled. The days are cut short.
And that shortening itself is linked to the first resurrection. The source uses the term Dewanlan Gangam, Great Tribulation Period Reduction.
It sees the completion of the witness triggers the shortening, which then immediately ushers in the next phase, the 7th trumpet and the resurrection. The suffering stops the moment its divine purpose is achieved.
Okay, so the required number of witnesses is reached, their faith validated under pressure. That provides the theological trigger.
The proof needed for the atonement to be fully applied and vindicated.
And then the climax. The 7th trumpet sounds. The 7th Nepal.
This is it, the end of the age as we know it. The sources are absolutely clear. They define the 7th trumpet as the great atonement itself, Deaksho.
Not just initiating it, but being it.
Being the culmination, the announcement of its completion and effects. Revelation 11.1 the kingdom of the world has become the kingdom of our Lord and of his Christ, and he shall reign forever and ever. That's the 7th trumpet announcement.
And this trumpet blast immediately triggers 2 huge simultaneous events.
Yes. First, the first resurrection, first bull.
This is the resurrection of the righteous dead, specifically those martyrs and faithful who endured the tribulation.
Primarily them, yes. Those who came out of the Great Tribulation, those who overcame, they are the ones who proved the case, so to speak, and they receive their reward immediately, resurrection to eternal life.
And the second major event initiated by the 7th trumpet.
The 7 bowls or 7 plagues, 7-day op or 7 jang.
Now, how are these different from the trumpet judgments?
They are distinct. The sources label them the 3rd woe, 3rd high. But crucially, they also call this period the Great Tribulation of the Beast, Jimsung Daiwanlin.
Ah, okay. So the 6th trumpet was the tribulation of the saints.
Testing them, refining them, allowing their witness to be completed.
But the 7 plagues are the tribulation of the beast.
Exactly. The focus shifts entirely. These are rapid-fire, final, and purely punitive judgments poured out directly on the beast, his system, and those who bear his mark.
No more chance for repentance during the plagues.
Doesn't seem so. The language is one of finality, of wrath being completed. These are the decisive strokes of justice, dismantling the entire structure of rebellion.
Okay, let's quickly trace the seven bowls plague sequence. What happens during this period?
It's the swift unraveling of the anti-God system. You have the destruction of the harlot Yumyeo Myomeng.
Babylon, the corrupt religious, political, economic system.
Yes, judged and destroyed. The plagues culminate in the gathering of the armies for the great conflict known as Armageddon.
Which the sources often interpret less as a single battle and more as the final decisive overthrow of all God's enemies.
Right, it's the conclusion of the war. And the seventh bowl plague itself seems to trigger the very end.
Poured out into the air.
And a loud voice from the temple in heaven declares, "It is done." This signifies the absolute completion of God's judgment plan for that age.
And this final plague often leads directly to the second coming, the coming to earth, the Tankaji Osham, or return to earth, Jisanjerim.
Yes, it seems to set the immediate stage for Christ's visible, glorious return. The final plague involves a massive earthquake, cities collapsing, islands fleeing the ultimate reshaping of the physical world just before he appears.
Now here's where the sources add another layer of complexity. These physical judgments, the plagues happening on earth, are apparently interwoven with specific atonement processes happening concurrently or sequentially in heaven.
Yes, this is crucial. It's not just about earthly destruction. There is vital administrative theological work being finalized in the heavenly sanctuary during this time.
Okay, what are these processes? The sources identify two main ones.
Right. Process one is called real sanctuary atonement. Homak Siljet Seongjon Sakjo. And this happens during the pouring out of the seven plagues.
Real sanctuary atonement, what does that involve?
The key text cited is Revelation 15.8. It says the heavenly temple was filled with smoke from the glory of God and his power.
Okay.
And then the critical phrase, no one was able to enter the temple until the seven plagues of the seven angels were completed.
No one could enter heaven's temple while the plagues fell on earth. Why? What's the connection?
It suggests a period of intense, final, internal cleansing and record finalization within the heavenly sanctuary itself. Think of it like a divine audit reaching its conclusion.
The ultimate closing of the books.
Exactly. God's presence fills the place, signifying the work is his alone at this point. The atonement records are being sealed, the judgments finalized based on the evidence presented earlier, the incense and prayers.
So the plagues on earth are the external execution of the verdict being finalized inside the sealed-off heavenly temple.
That seems to be the relationship. The internal, legal, spiritual work in the sanctuary must be completed, and its completion corresponds perfectly with the external purging of rebellion from the earth via the plagues. Once the plagues are finished, the sanctuary work is finished.
Okay, so that's process one. Once that real sanctuary atonement is done, what happens?
The focus shifts. We move to process two. Altar in Hades atonement, beyond Jadan Hades Sokjo.
From the inner sanctuary to the outer court, metaphorically.
Precisely. From the Holy of Holies work to the altar work. This mirrors the sequence in Leviticus 16 again, after the high priest finished inside the veil.
He had to come out and deal with the altar of burnt offering.
Right. Leviticus 16.16 and 19. He had to make atonement for the altar itself, cleansing it from the accumulated uncleanness of the people throughout the year, using the blood of the sacrifices on its horns and sprinkling it 7 times.
So how does cleansing the physical altar in the Old Testament translate to altar in Hades atonement in Revelation's final sequence?
The altar represents the point of contact between humanity and God on earth, sacrifice, worship, judgment. Cleansing the final altar signifies the complete purification of the earthly realm itself.
The ground zero of sin and redemption.
Yes. The soil, the environment, the very place where sin occurred and sacrifices were made. And extending that, it includes the cleansing or final judgment of Hades, the realm of the unrighteous dead.
So it's purifying the earth and settling the accounts of the wicked dead.
That appears to be the scope. It's the final cleanup of the entire domain affected by sin, the living space and the waiting place of the dead. It removes the last vestiges, the spiritual residue of rebellion from the created order.
Wow. So these two atonement processes, sanctuary finished, altar Hades finished, they represent the complete administrative and spiritual cleansing.
That's the picture the sources paint. Heaven reconciled, earth purged.
And what are the immediate consequences? The final acts that follow this completed dual atonement.
2 major things. First, the confining of Azazel Satan, SSL Gamgm.
The scapegoat analogy from Leviticus 16.
Directly. After the high priest cleansed the sanctuary and the altar, he laid hands on the live goat, the scapegoat, Azazel, confessed Israel's sins over it, and send it away into the wilderness, symbolically removing the sins.
So after the final atonement work is done in Revelation,
Satan, who represents the ultimate source and embodiment of sin, the cosmic scapegoat, can finally be bound and removed. He's cast into the bottomless pit, Mugiogion Gamgium, for the duration of the millennium.
his removal is only possible after the atonement is legally and spiritually complete.
That's the theological logic presented. The completed atonement provides the legal basis for his confinement.
And the final concluding event after all of this,
The great celebration. The Feast of Tabernacles Chol.
the Old Testament Harvest Festival.
Yes. It celebrated the ingathering of the harvest and commemorated God dwelling with his people in tents in the wilderness, in the end-time fulfillment,
It represents the final harvest of the redeemed saints.
and the beginning of God dwelling permanently with humanity in the New Jerusalem, the new cleansed creation. It's the ultimate celebration of homecoming and restored fellowship after the long, hard work of atonement and judgment is finally finished.
That provides a remarkably coherent structure. But let's get to the deeper why. Why this incredibly elaborate, structured process involving so much judgment?
This is where the sources offer, I think, their most profound insight. They give a final definition for the entire seventh seal process, from incense to plagues to final feast.
Which is
They say it is the process of completing the free will of created beings.
피조물들이 자유의가 완성되다.
Completing free will, that sounds almost paradoxical. How can free will be completed? Doesn't completion imply an end to choice? Not necessarily an end to choice, but an end to the possibility of choosing wrongly. The whole saga of sin, starting with Lucifer's rebellion, raised a fundamental question for the universe.
Can created beings, angels and humans, possess genuine freedom and remain reliably righteous forever? Or does freedom inevitably lead to rebellion?
Exactly. That's the cosmic problem. The entire process of judgment, tribulation, and atonement serves, in this view, to definitively answer that question.
How? By proving something.
By proving, through the crucible of suffering and temptation, that created beings can and will freely choose God's way, his law of love, even at the ultimate cost. This validation makes righteous free will a permanent fixture of the universe.
Okay, so what's the mechanism of completion? What's the specific test that proves free will can become permanently righteous? Is it just obedience?
It's obedience driven by the highest form of love. The sources point directly to Jesus' own words as the standard. Greater love has no one than this, that someone lay down his life for his friends. John 15:13.
That's the ultimate benchmark. Self-sacrificial love.
Yes. And the sources make a fascinating claim about this standard. They say this level of love, loving enough to give your life, is the true, genuine standard, that creatures can sufficiently keep, while remaining truly free.
Sufficiently keep, meaning it's not an impossible standard.
Right, it's the highest possible expression of love and loyalty, but it is achievable by created beings empowered by God's Spirit. It doesn't crush free will, it perfects it through voluntary commitment.
And keeping this ultimate commandment, this law of self-sacrificial love, is what defeats death.
That's the connection. Death entered through sin, through disobedience, through choosing self over God. But when the faithful witnesses, especially the martyrs, completed during the tribulation,
Ones whose number needed to be filled.
when they freely choose faithfulness, love, and obedience even unto death, they break the power of sin and death in their own experience.
Yeah.
They demonstrate that loyalty to God is stronger than the fear of dying.
Their completed number signals that the required proof is in.
Yes. The universe has seen sufficient evidence that created beings can, by grace and through faith, maintain ultimate loyalty.
And the immediate reward, the validation of this proof, is the first resurrection, called the resurrection to a better life, Deo Yohon Sangmyeong Bual.
It's the formal declaration. The standard has been met. The choice for love is reliable. Righteous free will is possible and sustainable.
This successful demonstration, then, has cosmic implications, leading to the affirmation of divine character.
Absolutely. The whole rebellion started, fundamentally, as an attack on God's character. Was he truly loving? Was his law fair and just? Could it even be kept?
Satan's core accusations.
Exactly. But the witness of the martyrs, culminating in this final period, answers those questions definitively. They prove God's law of love isn't an arbitrary burden, it's the path to life, and it can be followed even by frail humans through faith.
And this vindication of God's character and law then leads to
The permanent extinguishing of doubt, uigusim isamyol dueta, towards God among all loyal created beings.
doubt and mistrust were the seeds of the original sin.
Right. Once the fairness and goodness of God and the achievability of his way are demonstrated beyond any possible question by the redeemed themselves, the root cause of potential future rebellion is removed. Trust is fully restored.
The foundation for eternal security.
Precisely. And the scope of completed free will becomes universal for the redeemed creation. It applies not just to the human saints,
But also to the angels.
yes, the sources explicitly mention the completion of the angels' free will.
Yeah.
And they include the resurrected saints who have become like angels.
So the entire loyal universe witnesses the process, understands the proof, affirms the justice, and moves forward together with a confirmed, perfected, eternally reliable free will.
That's the outcome, because the very possibility of sin, rooted in doubt and misunderstanding, has been extinguished through this process. The free will of created beings is now complete and established forever.
Which is why, then, the final phase can happen, the return of Christ as judge.
Exactly. That's the prerequisite for Revelation 19.11, the rider on the white horse, whose name is Faithful and True. He comes to judge and wage war in righteousness.
Because the standard of righteousness has now been fully established and validated by creation itself.
Yes. His final actions are not arbitrary power, but the necessary execution of justice to secure the perfected creation that has now been proven possible and reliable through the witness of the saints. The atonement and the completion of free will make his righteous reign possible.
We've really covered a lot of ground here, tracing what these sources present as, well, an incredibly organized theological drama.
It really is. The seals, trumpets, plagues, not just random disasters, but a focused, structured process.
Aimed at achieving this comprehensive atonement, confirming God's justice, and ultimately securing the free will of creation forever by removing the very capacity for sin.
And I think the most crucial takeaway, if you're trying to grasp this framework, is that relationship between judgment and cleansing. The plagues are the outward force,
A hammer, as you said.
Right. But it's the internal atonement processes the work in the sanctuary, the cleansing of the altar in Hades that provide the theological engine. They validate overcoming death through ultimate, freely chosen, self-sacrificial love.
The whole thing hinges on the faithfulness of those witnesses.
It really does. It shifts the whole narrative, doesn't it? From simply God punishing a bad world to something more like God, through Christ and the faithful, proving righteousness to the entire universe.
The suffering becomes the condition of the proof, and the atonement is the mechanism that perfects and secures the result.
Well put. Which leaves us with a really profound thought to consider based on this framework.
What's that?
If the ultimate measure, the standard required for a completed, eternally secure free will, is indeed this willingness to sacrifice one's own life out of love and faithfulness, what does that imply about freedom itself?
You mean in a perfect sinless creation going forward?
Yeah. Does genuine freedom only become truly permanent, truly reliable, once its potential cost has been fully understood, demonstrated, and willingly paid by creatures themselves, validating God's loving standard?
Does freedom require the memory of that ultimate sacrifice to remain eternally secure?
That's the question this whole complex structure leaves us with. What is the nature of freedom and responsibility in a universe where sin is no longer possible? Something profound to reflect on.
A very profound question indeed. It certainly puts the entire sequence in a different light. Thank you for walking us through that intricate structure, and thank you for joining us on this deep dive.